Well, I'm back home. So, after spending a couple of days in Minnesota for the MLS All-Star game, well, I say a couple of days, it's only like 3 days I was there in Minnesota. I am back home, and then I actually got home a little bit earlier than anticipated because the flight that I was supposed to take to go back home got canceled at the last minute. Well, actually, it was canceled a long time ago, and I didn't realize it until the last minute. So I decided to move up the time that I was going to fly back to SF, and that originally I was going to get back like very late, like around 11:56 in the evening, which obviously that's not going to happen. So I move up that flight, and unfortunately that flight was like delayed for 30 minutes, but still got back home around 7:30-ish, and now I am going to do the Emotion Index. And this was actually a video that I was supposed to make before I fly to Minnesota, but I kind of ran out of time on Tuesday in terms of packing things up, so that's why I am doing this video right now. And I'm actually going to do the review for the MLS All-Star game right when I do the review for match week. I believe now it's 25 in terms of the weekend's action, because I still have to do the preview tomorrow, and then on Saturday, that I don't have a lot of times in terms of doing videos because of a full slate of busy MLS action. But I think on Sunday I'll do the recap of the MLS All-Star game. And again, things are a little bit pushed back after I was originally going to do this Emotion Index before I go to the trip. But anyhow, I guess I'll just name this the Emotion Index after the All-Star break. But as always, in terms of looking at all 28 fan bases and how they feel about their team after the All-Star break, we got some that they feel like their team cannot wait until the playoffs get soon enough, because they pretty much have secured their playoff spot down the stretch. There's the things are looking good. It looks like we are getting close to clinching a playoff spot. Could be better, could be worse. The man category and the fourth category, a little bit wordy, but thank goodness for the break to distract how bad our team is playing, or in this case, the team is playing. And then, of course, the fifth tier is always the panic and free fall tier. And then I also have a sixth tier, which, like I did last time, I've always have a special tier. And this special tier is the 2023 and beyond, which, in other words, it's the see you next season kind of tier. Because, again, now it's that time of the year, well, at least getting close to that time of the year, where there's going to be some teams that's going to be facing elimination. And it's also getting that time of the year that I'm going to start making moving forward video about those teams when they get eliminated. But let us go with Atlanta United, as we're going to once again go alphabetical order just to make things easier. I'm going to say they're right here. So for Atlanta, I think they kind of saved their season in that big win against the Seattle Sounders. They needed that win, and you can see how the fans felt about it. When Andrew Gutmann scored that stunning goal, that crowd inside Mercedes-Benz Stadium, which was 65,000 plus, they erupted, because not only it was a game-winning goal, but that was maybe a season-saving goal, and maybe could be a moment that if Atlanta does make it to the playoffs this season, they'll look at that moment as the moment that they were able to get over the line. But one of the things that I think for Atlanta, if they need to get themselves into the playoffs despite the numerous injuries that they've been dealing with, they need to stay consistent. The consistency is just not been there for this team all season long, and that if they want to make it to the dance, they need to be consistent, because they're still well in it, even though in terms of the standings, I believe they're in the Eastern Conference, but they're not that far, because 5th all the way through 12 in the Eastern Conference are all jumbled up. I think there's like only a 5-point separation between those spots. So yeah, we'll see if they can find some consistency to get themselves above the red line. But now moving on to Austin FC. For Austin, I think things are still looking good, and that they can't wait till playoffs come. But there are some concerns about this team, and one of the concern about this team is, the home form. The home form this season, well, when you look at their home record, it's still decent. It's not a championship caliber kind of home form. It's nowhere near as what we see with the best team in the league, and especially with LAFC being at the top of the Western Conference and pretty much winning every single home game. That's not the case for Austin FC, and it was shown in the last game against the San Jose Earthquakes. And in general, I think one of the things that starts seeing Austin have problem, and this might be their downfall once playoff time begin, besides the inexperience, is the defense. The defense have really allowed a lot of goals in these last couple of games, and we knew that this was going to be a weakness, and it wasn't really shown in terms of the stats because Brad Stuver has kind of bailed them out multiple times, but now Brad Stuver kind of came down to earth a little bit, and that, that bad defense that has always been exposed, and now it's being exposed even more, yeah, that is a little bit concerning, because if you want to go deep into the playoffs, you need to have a good back line in addition to a good attack, because we don't see a lot of teams go deep into the playoffs with a good attack, but just a iffy back line. And in the playoffs, you're not going to win like 3-3 or 4-3 kind of game like sometime Austin does. And especially, I think the other thing Austin needs to avoid, do not fall behind. Like there's so many times they fall behind in this season, and that while their fans feel happy that they have shown their resilience to come back over and over again, that doesn't always work out well when playoff time comes, especially how tight those playoff games are. So that's something that Austin will need to work on it when they prepare for the playoffs, of the fact that they need to work on their defense, and they cannot fall behind so early in the game, or fall so behind many times in this season's game. But moving on to Charlotte FC, for Charlotte, it could be better, but it could be worse. And Charlotte cases is kind of interesting because, yes, they're below the red line and they're still well in the hunt. But you just kind of sense that, again, when you look at the schedule that they have, it's a brutal schedule. Like, they have a lot of teams that they're about to face that is above the red line right now. And in some sense, there's actually a lot of teams they're going to face that are fighting those playoff position, or also known as 6-pointers in the playoffs in the Eastern Conference. And when you look at the Charlotte team, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if they have enough. I mean, there's times that they have played well, but then there's times that they haven't done so well. And then, of course, the last game against Chicago, I think that's the game that kind of makes me worry about this team, where, in those crucial playoff 6-pointer games, they cannot afford to lose those games if they want to become only the 8th expansion team to make it to the playoffs in their expansion season. But overall, I think their fans are probably happy in terms of how this season is. I mean, this season has been such a chaotic expansion season that's kind of almost rivaled the same way as FC Cincinnati was in their expansion season. Only difference is, at least they're keeping afloat despite all the chaos that is going off the field situation. But you just kind of sense that, even though there are among the many teams that in the hunt, if there's one team you can say that probably is not going to make it out of that, is probably going to be Charlotte FC, because of the tough schedule and also the inconsistent performance that they could show at times. But moving on to Chicago, and for the Fire, I mean, again, for Fire fans, I know there's a lot of cautious optimism, and a lot of Fire fans are saying, we've seen this story before, but eventually the bottom will drop. Well, the bottom has not dropped for this Fire team. In fact, it feels like this team is living up to its team name. They are on fire right now. I mean, they are just one of the hottest teams right now in the league. Again, no pun intended. And that right now, I think this is the first time I've seen this team have looked this good since that when they made it to the playoffs back in 2017, and when they were considered the best team in the Eastern Conference. Remember those teams with the likes of Bastian Schweinsteiger, Dax McCarty, and CJ Sapon? Yeah, those are the good Fire team that maybe was going to turn the Fire luck in terms of being a regular playoff contender. And while that hasn't really kind of worked out for this team, this season, with how expectation is with a new head coach in Ezra Henriksen, and also some of the signings, it seems like finally those signings are started to pan out. I mean, Jordan Shaqiri has finally started to look like the 8.4 million or something around that kind of fee of guy that they, of course, were hoping for. And then not to mention, Chris Wheeler has been a huge addition to this team in terms of the attack. And speaking of the attack, I think Fire fans are probably happy the fact that they're scoring goals again, because for a long time they must be very frustrated seeing their team always getting low scoring wins, and seeing a team that doesn't score a lot of goals, even with a relatively good defense. But now that this team has figured out their offense, and we know their defense have been very locked down throughout this season, yeah, this is a team that, right now they're above the red line. This is something that I don't think any Fire fans would have thought that was the case a couple of months ago, of how they were at the basement of the Eastern Conference. But now moving to FC Cincinnati, for Cincinnati, I think it could be better and it could be worse. And that last game against the Philadelphia Union is definitely the category of things are definitely looking good, and they're back in a playoff position, I believe now in 6th place in the Eastern Conference. But obviously, I would say that things could be better with the way that they're, if you not include what was probably the best game of their franchise history against the Philadelphia Union, they still were riding off of a very long winless run where they were drawn way too many games. And although those kind of moment hasn't really bite them, and in some way maybe kind of kept them above the red line for so long, they need to win more games, and they need to kind of, I wouldn't say have a very similar performance than the one against the Union, because again, I think it's very hard to replicate. Like I've seen before where teams can have an incredible performance, but we know that that's something that is going to be hard to replicate every game unless you're the best team in the league. In FC Cincinnati case, it's going to be interesting to see how this upcoming weekend is going to be. Can they, of course, replicate that kind of game? And especially, I think this weekend they have Atlanta United, which is a big playoff 6-pointer. We'll see how their performance after just such a stellar performance against the Union, and see if they can follow that up against Atlanta. But now moving to the Colorado Rapids. For the Rapids, I think things have definitely looked a lot better for them compared to just a couple of weeks where it looked like it was doom and gloom for Robin Fraser team. I mean, this team has got back-to-back wins, albeit they have done it in a crazy outcome. Like, they came off of a 5-4 win against the New York Red Bulls, and then followed that up by a 4-3 win against Minnesota. And that, history says that while this is very entertaining for neutral fans, and I think maybe for some Rapids fans, they're probably entertaining too, because they don't usually see their team go on Quakes chaos kind of mode as they've seen in these last couple of games. It's not sustainable, and that's going to be something I think the Rapids will have to be worried about. And especially, while their attack has picked up, the defense have not. I mean, the defense has been very poor in these last couple of games. And also the other thing I think the Rapids will definitely need to do, as I mentioned before, if they want to make it to the playoffs and continue this revival of them getting themselves back into the playoff hunt, win those road games. They've only won one road game this season, and it was just their last road game where they finally coming in the second to last team to finally win a road game. Or actually, no, they're not the second to last team, because right now I think every team has been able to win a road game after Toronto, of course, won their road game against Nashville. But I think they're the last team, because Toronto, of course, won it before, when the Rapids, of course, did it, because that game, of course, was a later kickoff. But now we move on to the Columbus Crew. Yeah, I think for a Crew fan, they're probably happy about how their team is. I mean, yes, the Crew, obviously, one of the frustrating things still with this team is that they're even doing that long unbeaten run that they've been going through. They've drawn a lot of games. I mean, they kind of have the Philadelphia Union / Nashville SC kind of problem of drawing way too many games despite not losing a lot of those games. But hey, I think if there's one thing that I will say about draws, and that, at times I've mentioned how draws doesn't really help teams, at least in the Eastern Conference, how wild it is, and this goes the same with the Western Conference turn to the playoff race, it maybe does help in terms of getting those points when other team around them keep losing games and keep not picking up points. But yeah, for the Columbus Crew, they'll need to keep this good run that they are on, and also win more games, because if you can win games, then this is a team that could get themselves higher in the standings and keep away from that red line, which, like I said, that red line right now for both conference, yeah, there's going to be a lot of shifting that's going to be going every single week with how tight it is for both conference. But now moving to DC United, and this is the first team that I'm going to mention. It's 2023 and beyond kind of tier that they are on, and that I've said this before for DC. I mean, this team, I don't think they have much shot in the Eastern Conference, and especially, yes, the Wayne Rooney era kind of kicked off with a spectacular win against Orlando City. That was all that they can cheer, because these next couple of games have not come anywhere close to be in a way where they could be getting themselves back to a playoff contention, which is fine, because this is a work in progress, and it's always hard, at least for a head coach coming in the middle of the season, expect to get his team going straight away. I mean, unless if you're an interim head coach and unless you're named Vanni Sartini or Pablo Mastroianni, that doesn't always happen often. So that's going to be something that I think going to this offseason, Wayne Rooney will have an offseason to kind of build this team and trying to get this team to the level that they should be heading into this year, which should be getting themselves back into playoff contention. And also, let me just cover this camera for a second. Hope that maybe that can refresh it. Oh no, I guess not. Actually, let me try to do this. Sometimes I cover the camera and then it can refresh. I guess not. Well, it looks like the camera is not being kind tonight. So, you know what? I'm just going to stop the video and restart my OBS here. Alright, so I've just restarted my OBS after the camera decided to not cooperate with me in terms of focusing. But let's move on to the next team, which is FC Dallas. And for Dallas, yeah, I think things are looking good. And that, you know, they've been riding on a high after just going through a lows for the past couple of months. Well, actually not for the past couple of months, but more like doing the month of June and all the way up to mid-July. But these last couple of games, they have definitely played much better and now have propelled all the way up to third place in the Western Conference. I mean, it just shows you how even when a team that is not doing well, and I think Dallas for a bit was like finding themselves in sixth place, and I think there was even one point where they actually dropped below the red line. One good run, and all of a sudden they're in third place in the Western Conference. That's how tight it is, and how that's just kind of a roller coaster ride that a lot of these fans that is on that kind of logjam in the Western Conference is going to feel about their team. And at least for Dallas fans, at least they're very happy with the way that things are looking like they're back on track after just a bit of a bad turn of runs, and that you know, they need to of course keep that going if they are going to continue to get themselves staying away from this logjam that we see in the Western Conference. But now moving to their interstate rival, the Houston Dynamo. Yep, it's 22, or actually 2023. I don't know why I keep saying 22. It's 2023 and beyond for the Houston Dynamo, because, you know, I think I was thinking about putting them in the thank goodness for the break to distract how bad this team is playing, but I think it's getting to a point where Dynamo fans will feel like, yeah, this team is not going to make it to the playoffs. And, you know, I think these last couple of games, it kind of showed the Dynamo has started to lose that kind of belief of what I said, that maybe they definitely have improved a little bit under Paulo Nakamura, and it seems like the rebuild is going well. And then these last couple of games, they look like the team from last season. So yeah, that's definitely not great news for any fans of this Dynamo team, and especially ever since they brought in Hector Herrera, a guy that was supposed to be a game changer, not only in the stands with it filling up, but also an X factor in terms of the team itself. Yeah, that has not worked out so far for the most part, and that's kind of alarming when that, of course, is the case, when they're one of their best known player brought into the squad is not really making an impact, as we've seen with the Dynamo early this season. But hopefully they can of course fix that around, because I think overall, you know, I don't want to say this is kind of a failure season for the Dynamo, because there's low expectation heading into this season, and that, you know, when you go through a rebuild like they're just about to start, you need to see some progress. And I think that throughout the season, I think Dynamo fans should be happy for the most part that they have show some progress. But again, let's not look at these last couple of games where it feels like they're going backwards in terms of the progress that they made in the first half of the season. But now we're moving on to Sporting KC, and this is another team that is 22 or 2023 and beyond kind of category. I mean, you know, for Sporting KC, they're pretty much in that category as soon as they lost to the Sacramento Republic in the U.S. Open Cup, and that I think they're probably right now the only team you can even safely say that they don't really care about the rest of the season for now. Well, maybe besides them and the Quakes, and maybe in some sense DC United. You know, for them it's all about thinking about, well, what are we gonna do in this offseason, because I think there's gonna be some big decision that this Sporting KC team needs to make in the offseason. And I mentioned many times before, there's going to be a lot of soul searching that's going to be made in the front office, whether it's is admitting that it's time to kind of blow up the core and start this rebuild, and or maybe a retool that they need in their team. And not to mention some big name player in this team could be departing. I mean, one big name player is Daniel Showery. What is his status is going to be? I mean, I won't be surprised he might be not re-signed from this team, because again, you know, he's been having a very inconsistent last couple of years with Sporting KC, and that I think it's kind of maybe that time they maybe think about moving on from him, and that again, you know, they're all about thinking about rebuilding next season, or at least they're trying to do so, because again, it's going to be time will tell when we get into the off season what exactly their direction is going to be after just such a disastrous season that they had this year. But now moving to the LA Galaxy. Yep, it's panic and free fall, and not long before, if this does continue of the bad form that they've been in, probably in the 2023 and beyond kind of category. I mean, it's been bad for the Galaxy, and I don't even need to talk much about why it has got bad for this team. I mean, the defense absolutely is atrocious right now. The midfield is kind of the same, and then the attack, it's just Dejan Jovic trying to rescue his team time and time again, and time again and they of course fall short, which just infuriates the Galaxy fans even more. But yeah, this is another team that has a lot of soul searching that needs to do this offseason, especially, you know, Greg Vanney. I think if you talk about who is potentially the next head coach to be let go in MLS, Greg Vanney might be on the top of the list, because you can see there's a lot of Galaxy fans are not happy with Vanney and what he has done in his job, and also in terms of the front office too, not really getting this team on the track of where they're supposed to be. And that, yeah, I think this offseason, they're another team that there could be some big changes that could be coming in this offseason to trying to turn their fortune around. But talk about their intercity rival, LAFC. Well, yeah, LAFC is right here, and again, not a lot of explanation I need to make about why LAFC is playoffs can't come soon enough, because we've seen it in the regular season, where they are a team that is absolutely unstoppable, and that in some way they're starting to remind me of 2019 all over again, where they were a team that was just running people over left and right. And now we'll just hope that, you know, for LAFC fans' sake, it doesn't end up to be the end of what happened in 2019 when they got eliminated in the Western Conference Final in the hands of the Seattle Sounders. I mean, their fans know that this is a MLS Cup or bust kind of team. Anything but less than an MLS Cup will consider a failure, and we'll see if they can deliver once playoff time does come. But now moving to Inter Miami, I think things are looking good for Inter Miami. And again, I think for Miami, you know, if there is one team out of every single team in MLS that has had a revitalized year and are kind of punching above their weight a little bit, it's got to be Inter Miami. I mean, right now, when you look at where they are in the standings, I think they're currently 8th right now in the West, and they're kind of tied on points for the last playoff position, but, you know, they have less wins, so that's why they don't have the tiebreaker. But when you look at how this season is for Inter Miami, after making so many changes and having not a lot of I know some Miami fans might have an unrealistic expectation of them supposed to make it to the playoffs, but when you look at the changes that they made and all the players that they brought in, and the unknown commodity, and I haven't even mentioned of the sanction that they're going through, the fact that this team isn't in a playoff hunt, it is nothing short of a miracle. And that, it also just say another thing I will say about this team that has kind of started to prove some people wrong, including myself, is that they've now shake off the label of them being a team that can fall off the map like what we've seen last season. And then as soon as I tell them that they're inconsistent, they're now looking to pick up points left and right, and including last week when they were able to pick up 5 points in those 3 games in 7 days, which is very impressive considering the fact that they had to play in the West Coast and then fly back on the East Coast on a short rest during those times. So yeah, for Inter Miami, I think their things are definitely looking good, and that, you know, again, I feel like their fans, even though I know some will have or unrealistic expectation of the team should be making the playoff every year. Consider the fact that this was supposed to be a long rebuild and a complete tear down, and now they're getting to a spot where they could make it to the playoffs. They can continue this good success that they had. Yeah, I think this team can. I think this team is going to consider. This season is definitely considered a success, and there's definitely more to come with this team too. But now moving to Minnesota. And for the Loons, I mean, I would say things are still looking good. I mean, yes, these last couple of games and these last 2 games haven't been great with the way that they came off of a 4-4 draw against the Portland Timbers and then losing 4-3 against the Colorado Rapids in a game where they should have won that one if Dane Sinclair decided to not had his worst game in his career. And that I also would say that it is such a relief to see Dane Sinclair in the All-Star game and performing well. I mean, I saw him in person. As soon as he was subbed in that All-Star game, I was getting a little nervous because, I know what happened a couple of days ago. I was wondering, can he, of course, be able to bounce back in a big way? And boy, did he do that. I mean, it looked the performance I've seen Dane Sinclair perform looked like the old Dane Sinclair, or at least the Dane Sinclair that I know from the first half of the season, and of course, eventually winning the MVP of the MLS All-Star. And that also may be the case, that maybe his job is at least safe for this upcoming week, or at least maybe Adrian he decided to switch it up a little bit, maybe bring Miller in there so he can give a rest for Dane Sinclair in terms of the All-Star game. But, no, I think besides the whole goalkeeper situation, things have definitely looking good, especially on the attacking end, where it's hard to believe. But remember a couple of Emotion Index video I talked about how this attack was absolutely horrendous, and that it feels like it's the same as we have seen in the past couple of years. All of a sudden, now that they're doing well. And what's even more shocking is they're doing well even without Reynoso. Like, I thought Reynoso was going to be the guy that is keeping this team afloat, and that when they did not have Reynoso at times, I thought this team was doom and gloom, but little did we know that this team was not doom and gloom. This team, they're starting to be some key contributor in the attack. I mean, Bongi Huane, as soon as he scored his first goal, he started to look like a guy that is in form. Speaking of a guy that is in form, Luis Almeria. I mean, he's probably having the best form of his time with the Loons, and probably the best number 9 that we had since maybe a certain guy named Christian Ramirez was playing for this team. So yeah, I think things are definitely looking good on the attacking end. It's just that the defensive end, and I will use the fact that yes, they have been hit heavily with injuries, and hopefully when they do get guys back, this defense will be a little bit more locked down. But maybe that also is a little bit concerned, the fact that this team does not have a lot of depth in terms of that spot. Though that being said, they have made some signings in terms of adjusting that. Most importantly, bring Jonathan Gonzalez. Hopefully can step into that midfield and add some more depth, knowing the fact that we're still injured to hell in terms of the defense and the midfield. But yeah, for now, I think things are looking good, and I do think that even if they're in this tight playoff race that they're going through, this team is still going to come out well once both the attack and defense is firing on all cylinders. But now moving to Montreal, and for Montreal, things have been pretty good so far too. I know it's been inconsistent in these last couple of weeks, but it hasn't really kind of hurt this team. I mean, they're still somehow in 3rd place in the Eastern Conference right now, despite the fact that Wilfried Nancy team have not played very well, and not to mention there is a little concerning factor that Georgi Mihailovic hasn't returned to the form that he was when he suffered that injury. I mean, I don't blame him, because when you suffer an injury after you had such a good form, it's always hard to just come back and be that same guy that you were before you suffer an injury. But we'll see whether if he can, of course, pick up, because if he does pick up, I think this Montreal team will definitely challenge for those position in terms of the top spot in the East. I mean, they're not that far behind in terms of the top spot in the East. So yeah, they can do so as long as if they can stay consistent. But now moving to Nashville, and for Nashville, yeah, they are down here. And even though Nashville is still in 6th place in the Western Conference, they're still above the red line. There is a lot of concern for this team, and it's getting to a level where they're almost close to the panic level, where this team have won one game out of their last 8. This team simply cannot win at this park, and now we're also seeing them not able to win on the road like we've seen in past season. And the other thing that is also alarming with this team is the defense has not been up to par. Like, this is a team that has always been prized for its defense, and always pride itself as a team that is one of the most stingy defensive team in the league. And this season, at least in these last couple of games, that has not been the case. And that, add to the fact that we also know that this attack is still heavily rely on Hani Mukhtar, and now also so you can maybe add Theo Bunbury on that list. And again, still no disrespect to Theo Bunbury, I think he's been having a revitalized career in these last couple of games. But when Theo Bunbury is scoring goals for you on a consecutive base, there's some serious issue in your attack. And again, this attack, it's still Hani Mukhtar and nobody else, and that I just fear for them that if nobody is going to step up on the attack, and also not to mention if the defense continue to play how badly that they've been playing, this team is not going to win a lot of games, both on the road and especially at home. Like, it's hard to believe how bad they have been at home this season. I mean, I don't know if it's because of the fact that when you play in a new building, it does get time to use for it, and that does happen sometime. I mean, we know Cincinnati had a lot of tough time in terms of finally getting wins at home, in the same case with Columbus when Lower.com field was open. But for Nashville, they're having a tough time in terms of adjusting their new home, and that they if they want to not only make it to the playoffs, but also finish at least closer where I predicted them was finish at the top of the Western Conference, they need to win those home games. Because if they don't win those home games, and if they don't snap out of this bad form, oh boy, they could actually miss out on the playoffs, and that would be a catastrophic failure of a season, consider what their first couple of years in MLS has been. But now moving to the New England Revolution, and for the Rams, I mean, things could be better, but it could be worse. And the could be worse factor is the fact that they did get a big win against Orlando that has propelled themselves, I think, pretty close to the playoff position. But the could be better is they're still not above the red line right now, and that, again, it just feels like they're stuck in that part where they're almost there. They can taste themselves getting back above the red line, and then there's maybe a setback or a resort that doesn't go their way. Then, in other words, I would also say they're very inconsistent at times. There's times where they have looked good. There's times that they have not looked good, and that this team has looked like a long way off of when they won the Supporter Shield last season. So, yeah, they got to figure that out, because, as long as if they can keep getting stuck in third gear, and we just keep thinking that eventually this Revs team, this Bruce Arena team, will get things going. If they don't get going, they could actually miss out on the playoffs. And, I talk about Nashville having a catastrophe of a season. They missed the playoffs. It would be even more true for New England, consider this is supposed to be an all-in year for them. After last season, they suffer an early playoff exit, and to not even make it to the dance despite all the talent that they had, that has to be a catastrophic failure. But now moving to the New York Red Bulls, and for the Red Bulls, I mean, I would say they're now down to this tier where their fans is starting to maybe be a little bit concerned because of the inconsistent form that they have been in. I mean, you notice a pattern that you started to see where I've started to put a lot of teams kind of in the inconsistent didn't mark around the same spot, because that's what could be better, could be worse. It's all about. It's about your team being a little bit inconsistent and sometimes picking up resort thinking, and you're thinking that they're in a good run of form, and then they certainly started to go back into bad form. And that, for the Red Bulls, that's kind of how it is, where there's times where when the pressing is working, they are a team that you do not want to face. But when the pressing is not working, and when their defense decided to allow a lot of goals, as we've seen in the last couple of games, oh boy, that's when things have started to not go well for this team. And that, it feels like it's very day and night with this team too, which is a perfect category for them to put in the could be better and could be worse of how their fans feel like. But now talk about their intercity rival, NYCFC, and this might be a surprise, but I'm actually going to put them pretty low here. And I know there might be some that will say that I should put them in the playoffs. Can't come soon enough because they're still in the top 2 spot in the Eastern Conference. But my biggest concern with this NYCFC team, and I know it's still a small sample size, but this offense simply cannot not operate without Tati Castellanos. Like, you look at this attack and you look at these last two games that they have played without Tati Castellanos, it has been very stagnated. And not to mention, I also feel like Nick Cushing, I know NYCFC head coach, whenever they get thrown into the meet, they tend to always get off to a slow start, and it seems like that's kind of the same case with Nick Cushing. But it's getting to a point where it's hard to imagine if he can't turn it around, and especially, I think, again, the biggest factor of this is the fact that the attack looks very stagnant. They look very, very lifeless without Tati Castellanos there. And then we talk about how Castellanos was the heart and soul and the linchpin of this team. And now, without the linchpin, you can see that this team is starting to be exposed in the attack, and they need to figure it out because, this is a team that, even though they sit pretty comfortable in the playoff position, if they go through this situation where they can't get this attack going, I don't think they're going to go very far into the playoffs. Now, that being said, I said the same thing about them last season. Remember last season when they gone through a goal drought and how I talked about how they need to figure out the attack or else things are not going to work out? Well, they figured it out, and then they went on to win MLS Cup. So maybe this is just a small sample size, but again, it's a very alarming small sample size of how badly they missed Tati Castellanos, and that how we knew it was very important for them to have him, but now it seems even more important now that he's gone and they're not performing well at all on the attacking front. But now going to Orlando City. Yeah, for Orlando, it's panic and free fall. And the only thing that I think Orlando City fans at least are looking forward to is the fact that they are playing in the U.S. Open Cup final and they have a chance to win their first ever trophy. But even that, I mean, again, no offense to Orlando, but me and pretty much everybody that of course is either an MLS fan or just a soccer fan in U.S. in general, wants Sacramento Republic to become the first team since 1999 to win the U.S. Open Cup that is not an MLS team. And, there could be a case that could happen because Orlando is not performing well right now. I mean, it feels like, I talked about the inconsistent form that they have. Now they're no longer inconsistent. They're just straight on bad. And this really kind of reminds me of the first 5 years of their existence where, I remember for the first couple of years where they always tend to get off to a good start, and then they just fell apart in the second half of the season, and it's happening again in this one. And that has to frustrate Orlando City fans. Like, I hear a lot of Orlando City fans are saying that this team should not be back where they were in the first 5 years, being a team that just fall apart in the second half of the season. And when you look at the talent that they have, this shouldn't be a team that looked like the first five seasons. I mean, I could argue in the first 5 seasons, they didn't really have the player to really compete for those playoffs, and they kind of fall apart. This team does, and the fact that it is just fall apart spectacularly like that is a huge concern for Orlando City fans. And again, I know they're looking forward to the U.S. Open Cup final and maybe finally getting their first ever taste of silverware, but the way that they're playing right now, do I really back that Orlando City is gonna easily get that U.S. Open Cup win, especially against a Sacramento team that are just, it feels like this is a team that is a team of destiny with the run that they have. Yeah, I think that just makes that U.S. Open Cup final even more exciting and more intriguing. But for Orlando City's sake, as much as they're looking forward to that first trophy, they also need to worry about their form. Like, their form has gone so bad that they're actually now outside of the playoff position, and they are continue to fall. They will continue to fall if they don't start picking up points and getting out of this death spiral that they're in. But now moving to the Portland Timbers. For the Timbers, it's been kind of interesting these last couple of games. I mean, feels like they are kind of in the same situation that the New England Revolution find themselves in. Where remember when New England kind of got off to a terrible start, and then they kind of had that resurgence, and we started to think that, well, this is when New England is going to start getting themselves above the red line, and then they just kind of got stuck in that place. And the same goes for the Timbers right now. I mean, they're kind of stuck in that place where they're kind of either up and down in the playoff line, and that, you know, after that momentum that they had in that Cascadia, you know, Derby win, it feels like that has kind of stalled out a little bit. Now, don't get me wrong, this Timbers team still have the longest active unbeaten streak right now in MLS, and I think it's now at 9 or 10 games right now. But the problem is, a lot of those games are draws, and that, you know, I think those draws have really affected this team. I mean, some of those draws have been good, but there's also some that are like the last game against FC Dallas, where they channeled their old Portland Timbers self, giving up a late goal and cannot hold on to late lead and seize out a game, and that has to frustrate Timbers fans, because if they can get all 3 points in that one, then yeah, they can. That it change the circumstances of them being above the red line and start making a run. But because of the fact that they're kind of like the refs, just kind of stuck between that playoff bubble kind of line, you know, unless if they can't get that out and maybe continue this unbeaten run that they're in, they're probably going to be stuck in that point too. But now moving to RSL. And for RSL, yeah, it hasn't been fun for RSL fans, and it feels like they're now back down. You know, RSL's season, this season, it's been kind of like a mountain kind of a projectile, or you could say maybe like the cryptocurrency kind of stock market. It sometimes go up, it sometimes go down, it sometimes go up, it sometimes go down, and now it feels like they're in the down part. And a lot of that has to do, I feel like a lot of that has to do with the fact that the defense hasn't been playing well, but it's also on the attack too. Like, the attack hasn't really looked good, and I feel like they really now miss the presence of the likes of Bobby Wood, and especially with Demir Krylak, and that we all knew that coming into the season, this team was going to not really compete with the big boys in terms of talent. But if there's one thing that at least this team is good, and it's been kind of building their identity, the team, of course, is the start. But unfortunately, yeah, that just have not worked out in these last couple of games, and that, you know, I feel like maybe at times we would say that RSL was kind of overachieving a little bit, and I think maybe this is just these last couple of games are just a reality check that they're not there in terms of getting themselves. In terms of, well, actually they're still in the playoff position, because again, it feels like every single team in the Western Conference is not doing well in that logjam of places. But it is definitely concerned that these last couple of games they have struggled, and that they need to, of course, as I mentioned, with other team, need to pick up points if they want to stay in that spot, or hope that all the other team around them would drop points. I mean, you notice how I mentioned a lot the same thing when I talk about a lot of teams that is in these playoff position or in that logjam. It just feels like every of those teams just keep tripping in each other, or keep dropping points every single week, because they just cannot find some. But now moving on to the San Jose Earthquakes. Yep, they are 2023 and beyond, and I don't really need to explain a lot of reason why they are 2023 and beyond, because, you know, this team is already focused on that, with the way that they're clearly on a downward spiral right now, and that even though they occasionally pick up points to give false hope to fans, yeah, this is a team that is 2023 and beyond, and it's been like that since the beginning of the season. But now moving to the Seattle Sounders, you know, I keep saying that the Sounders are eventually going to get them out of this mess and find themselves above the red line, and technically they still could. I mean, they even though they're the first team out, they do have a game in hand over the team that is the last team out of the playoff position, which is the Portland Timbers. It just feels like my biggest concern with this team is that, can they get healthy enough, and especially can they get Rudy Diaz really carry this team over the hump and get themselves over the playoff line. And for me, I would say that could be the case, because, you know, again, when you have Rudy Diaz, who is just a game changer, and we've seen him drag this team time and time again to be a team that is is considered to be one of the most feared team in the Western Conference, if not the most feared in the Western Conference. You know, I think they can do so. But as much as I've also say that, you know, they could keep their playoff streak alive and making the playoffs again, I feel like this is really one of the first year where I said that the Seattle Sounders might actually not come into the Western Conference scaring anybody, and I won't be surprised that they might not even make a lot of noise heading into the Western Conference, because again, I feel like maybe you could say that part of the injuries that they've been dealing with, and the fact that the depth that they usually show out has not really kind of show up this season, might be a test to the long CCL run that they had. But hey, you know, like I said, I feel like this team is going to make the playoffs. Like, this team is too good to not miss the playoffs, and it would be too good to be true if they miss out on the playoffs. And right now, again, even when they're not playing well, because how the Western Conference are just like a tank conference right now, where every team aren't able to find some consistent form. You know, the Sounders can keep into it. They can definitely get themselves well, and that you know, even though I did just set the fact that, yeah, this might be the first season that I don't believe that they're gonna make a lot of noise. Watch how they're gonna prove me wrong. Watch how Brian Schmetzer probably just watched this video and said, yeah, I took that personal, and now we're gonna make it a crazy run to MLS Cup again. But now we're going to go to Toronto FC, and for Toronto, you know, I think for TFC, they're right here where I want to put them at the 2023 and beyond kind of category, because again, you know, they still have a lot of work to do in terms of making up that early deficit that they find themselves in to get into the playoffs. But I feel like what I said with the Western Conference, the same with the Eastern Conference. At times, teams may be tripping over each other, and that, you know, one good run that you can go on and you're in the playoff hunt. That could be the case for TFC, especially with the way that you know, ever since the Italian import has come to this team has looked very, very dangerous and have looked like a playoff team. And if they can sustain that, they can easily get up to the standings and really start to challenge those places. And that, yeah, I think for TFC fans, things are definitely looking good in terms of their hope of making the playoffs. And maybe it's not their season is not done yet, especially after getting that first big road win, which is something that they've been alluding for. I mean, I talked about Colorado been alluding for that first road win. It's hard to believe TFC have not got a road win up until that first road win against Nashville SC in the last game. But now finally moving to Vancouver. Yeah, for the Whitecaps, they're right here. And again, I'm going to reiterate what I said about the Whitecaps to pretty much every of these teams that is in the bubble and in this logjam in the Western Conference. No inconsistency, or no consistency. They've been very inconsistent. They have times where they have show up and got big wins, and then there are times where they have dropped points and look lifeless. And at least, you know, I think at least with the Whitecaps case, at least they're trying to stay in it as long as possible, and we'll see whether if they can maybe get some favorable result their way, and eventually they get themselves in the standing. Because I think that's kind of the message for all those teams that is in the logjam in the Western Conference. Just get on a hot run, and all of a sudden you can get yourself in a good position and make sure you make it to the playoffs. And also win your playoff 6-pointer when you do face against team that are your real threat in terms of making the playoffs and taking those playoff position away if you're above the red line. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this emotion index? And as always, if they put some teams a little bit too high, let me know in the comments below, or put some team a little bit too low. Let me know in the comments below also. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.